that you will start with a presentation, a small presentation, and afterwards we can start a conversation.
Okay, thank you very much for that kind introduction. And Sandra asked me to, yeah. Okay. Sandra, so I'm here on the occasion of the launch of the book, Digital Methods in Spanish. And it's been a long time coming. The translation was available for a few years. As you'll hopefully see tomorrow, it's very beautiful. I'm very pleased. So that's the occasion I'm here. Sandra asked me, so the book launch, and Sandra asked me if I would talk a little bit about some recent. So what have you been doing recently? And it's because the Digital Methods book originally was published in 2013. So this is a translation for the 2013 book. And of course, a lot has happened in the digital studies since then. So she asked me to talk a little bit about more recent work. So I thought I would give you an introduction to a few of the things that we're doing. So first, I want to introduce you to the Digital Methods Initiative. So this is the group of researchers that I founded in 2007. It's been around for quite some time. And we specialize in a couple of things. One is the creation of software tools for digital data collection, analysis, and visualization. So you see here digital methods of some of the tools. The most well-known tool at the moment is called Forecast. Forecast gathers data from most major social media platforms as well as from alt tech. So not only Instagram and TikTok, but also from alternative alt tech, so Telegram. So this is so we're active in software. We're actually in the humanities, so it's very useful. Some of us are also social scientists. But we work in the humanities. We have a lot of hybrid people. So I tend to hire people who are both humanities researchers as well as have a background in something computational. So we have quite a few people who are both. And if you move into that direction, I would recommend to you that it's much harder to try to form partnerships from the computer science department and social sciences, but rather you should get people who are hybrid. So this is what we've been doing for many years. The other thing that we're known for is our digital methods summer and winter schools. So we have had schools since 2009, and these schools have a particular format. This is a very typical format working in the area of digital studies. It's called a data sprint. It's the equivalent of a hackathon, but for researchers. And so a data sprint is you gather for either a 1 or 2 week period and you complete a research project. This is what we do with these schools. So we have, like I said, we've had many of them, and there are normally about 15 or 20 projects that we do first week. And maybe 12 or 13 of these end up as academic, high-level academic applications. So it's also effective. It's also learning by doing, reversed classroom, flipped classroom, all of these sorts of ideas built into this space. This is the one that's coming up in this summer. It's on prompting. Of course, prompting is not on the edge in AI, but how do you prompt in order to research critically AI systems? this is what we'll be exploring in the upcoming session. We'll do this twice a year. Actually, we have actually the third one. So this is how we work. So I'm working on it. Okay. So I just want to mention what digital methods are, just so you have a sense of it. So tomorrow, if you come to the book presentation, you'll have a very, very deep sense of what they are, but this is a very shallow sense of what they are. So digital methods is a term that I coined in 2000. It's a term that was part of the title of a book called The End of the Virtual. Call them digital methods. It was the idea that that we can no longer make a distinction between real and virtual. That ended then. Actually, it ended a little bit before that. A number of publications around that time, 2007, 2008, 2009, we talked about what is referred to as the computational term in the study of digital culture. So we were no longer studying digital culture as something separate, distinctive. Rather, we were studying digital culture as a culture. We weren't studying digital society, we were studying society. So this was the end of the virtual, this idea that something is very, very distinct. However, digital methods to study something particularly digital in this recognition of the computational term. That is what I refer to as natively digital objects and natively digital. This is what digital objects are. This is what we specialize in, sort of, and it's the study of things like this as being quite peculiar to online culture. So there is still a peculiarity to the online. It's in the objects and the methods. It's what the data was reflective of what's happening in society, but we want to study it. One needs to learn from methods and the objects. So this is the argument. So this is what digital methods are studying. Natively digital, both the objects as well as the methods, and that might sound counterintuitive. So what are natively digital methods? But if you begin to think about it, there have been a number of them that have been developed that, of course, aren't completely native. Nothing is complete. It always comes from somewhere. But for example, crowdsourcing. This is something that's very much associated with very peculiar to. Okay, so this is what digital methods, and now people oftentimes, because digital methods sounds like a brand from Amsterdam, I oftentimes just say digital research, so not to be too brandy. So digital, so I'm going to say digital research methods. So it makes it a little bit more inclusive. Okay, so for those of you who just joined us, Sandra asked me, because we're here for a book launch of digital methods, which is recently translated into Spanish. But that book is from 2013. Sandra asked me to talk about things, more recent things. So that's what I'm doing. So this is more recent. This is what I have been working on. And this is the textbook for digital methods. It's called Doing Digital Methods. So this came out in 2019 with Sage. And I just finished the second edition, which will come out in the. It could come out this year. You just put 2024 to be safe. So here you see these are I mean, there are some introductory chapters which are not here, but this is the table of contents. So you begin to see what digital methods or digital research methods. And what I've done here is I take it more or less platform by platform. And it relies on the same philosophy as I just introduced. So it's about learning from each of these devices or these platforms, and then thinking about how to do cultural and social research with them. So it's a very, very different methodological approach. Thinking methods is very, very different methodological approach. It repurposes, which is sometimes quite strange, but for the internet, that's not strange. The internet is a sort of rework. What people do online is they remix, they repurpose, they resample, it's very recycled. It's all this stuff. And so I took this spirit, and applied it to research. And it's in the notion of so these are the various platforms that are being repurposed. So the first one is the Internet Archive. Some people don't know that the Internet is archived. Wow, the Internet's archived. It is, but it's not completely archived. And that's what makes studying archives interesting. But we have built tools that sit on top of archive.org, which is the Wayback Machine. And we also teach this as a textbook. We make screencast documentaries of histories of websites in the style of time-lapse photography. Take snap, what changes over time of the website, it's been archived, and then you create a voiceover and narrate. And in this chapter, and I'm not going to go through all these chapters, but in this particular chapter, I talk about sort of 3 different approaches to narrating the history of websites. So, and one of them is a kind of organizational or institutional history. Another one is the history of the sort of collision between old and new media. Like, if you look at the New York Times, the website over time, if you do like a time photography, it started as the Cyber Times, something like dedicated to the internet, and slowly but surely became a newspaper. So it's like counterintuitively, it went from the cyber to, and then the third one is you can also do like social history, cultural history. So in that spirit, all of these various chapters that take the outputs of the platforms and repurpose them for social and cultural research. Maybe I'll take one more. So I just wrote this chapter. So TikTok there's a lot more literature on TikTok than you would imagine. I was kind of shocked. So, I mean, of course, in many fields, but communication and media studies, there might be like 30, 40 articles already. But some of the leading articles, they talk about TikTok as being populated by imitation puppies who imitate what's happening on the platform in order to trend. So they jump on waves, which is a little bit different from it's different from, like if you compare what's TikTok influencer versus an Instagram influencer, they're quite different in how they become that. One of them, Instagram, they rely kind of on metrics. Visibility level, style, mise en scène, staging. Whereas TikTok, they rely on the latest trends, jump on trends. So if you look at the hashtags, for example, that they use, if it's a political video, for example, they'll use hashtags of all the candidates. Like, it's not like, so you can't do hashtag analysis in order to demarcate the supporters of just one candidate, because it's a mess in that sense. So it's a very, very different style means by which to come. Anyway, so I developed some techniques to study the extent to which one is imitating principally or not. And so I developed a technique called hashtag sound associations. So the hashtags are the kind of content, let's say, and sounds. And so if everyone is using sounds, no matter what the content is, then they're imitated. But if they're using sounds for particular hashtags, like QAnon Trump song, just for that, then they're not imitating. They're forming a hashtag versus an imitation. So this is the technique that's in there. But the other thing that I want to mention just really quickly is that this is very much underappreciated cross platforms. Everyone does single platform across Instagram studies, Twitter studies, YouTube. And the cross platform is something that that needs further development. I've worked on it myself a bit, but okay, so recently, so I want to show you now 3 or 4 things. One is misinformation and social media. So these are 2 recent books. One is on social media manipulation, which I guess, I mean, these 2 subject matters are important in this country. So not only this. And what we've been doing is this slide got messed up. But what we've been doing is we've been working on the definitional or the ontological of what constitutes misinformation. I'm just going to fix this slide. What's interesting when you think about misinformation? So you're familiar with the notion of fake news, right? So fake news came into being, again, it was recoined by the journalist, Craig Silverman, as we 2016 November. That you're familiar with this. But what people might not be particularly familiar with is what was defined as such. And what Silverman did was he defined fake news as not only disinformation, conspiracy, and this is like fake NGOs, but also the hyper-partisan. This is a term that was coined in 2016. But yeah, also in journalism, by John Newman. And he included, so it was a trendy term. He included that in fake news. And when you include the hyper-partisan, the problem is massive. But other folks, and this is other people who've done this work. There are some journalists who've done this, but also, ironically, Facebook. They don't include the hyperpoints. And so it's also in the interest of. You could also say that hyperpartisan is actually quite a normal part of it. But anyway, the problem gets a lot smaller. So this is some of this is some of the things that we talk about. In particular, the second, some of the table contents are just so this is in fact a cross-platform analysis, or it's a number of single platform analysis, which in the introduction and conclusion try to turn into it. One of the highlights is this chapter on Twitter as an accidental authority. So Twitter, not only Twitter, many social media platforms accidentally having to be an authority to make all these judgments on what is misinformation or not, and how they did it. So I just have 3 more of these, and then I'll go quick. We're working on post-truth spaces, so this is related. This one that I want to mention is something separate because it's about the war in particular. So we have an EU project. It's AI assisted verification. Verification is like fact checking, debunking. So this is AI assisted debunking and fact checking. But what we're doing, this is with presenting this ICA, International Communication Association, in Toronto next month. Yeah. We've developed a technique to locate post-truth spaces. It took us a long time. I'm not sure if it's this is Moldova. So we're mapping all the Eastern European countries for Russian influence campaigns. This is a graph. It looks like any other graph. But it's a relationship between Facebook pages and URLs. So which pages share which URLs? And what we found is that we're able to, we're doing this across 9 countries. This is kind of pro-Russian space. And then we're using OSINT, open source intelligence techniques to try to verify the sources. And when they're difficult to verify, we call them post-truth space. This is it in Moldova. And so they're very isolated. In other countries like the Czech Republic, they're here. So we're seeing the extent to which these post-truth spaces are becoming central or remain marginal around the world. So we're doing Poland, we're doing the Czech Republic, Bulgaria, etc. So this is a massive 9 countries stuff. So we're also working on meme studies. I thought I think I might present this afternoon to the graduate students. Maybe they would like that. Visual media analysis. So this is some work that's just come out. This just came out in the Communication Society. This is from Sage. It's like how to make meme collections. So we're studying memes as formats. It's very fluent. So what are memes actually online? What are they? Everyone thinks they're image macros. So it's like an opening line of text and closing. But if you look, this diagram might be complicated. Right? But if you compare what a meme is in Google Images versus rectangle, this is descriptive. Know your meme, which is very database. Generator, if you compare what it means, they're all different. So we queried in each of these COVID. And these are the sources where they come from. We have an image that shows you the formats. They're all quite different. So the argument in this piece, what are the new technical speaking is it depends on where you source them, which is a very obvious thing to say, but this it took 2 years of peer review. People didn't like this idea. Okay, so we're doing that. This is the last one, I think. This is very, very fresh. So this is a piece that just got accepted. This just got accepted. So this one. But this is critiques Google auto completion. So when you start typing in Google and it completes. So these are prompts. People have been doing this for years. They prompt Google, but now we're prompting ChatGPT and we're prompting in order to sort of see the extent to which they're biased. This is research that people do. And so what we're doing, this is also what we're doing in summer school, is we're doing critical prompt design. So how do you prompt? Why do you prompt? So a lot of the prompting these days is trying to gaslight, like make AI think it's crazy. You know what I mean? Like, look how crazy AI is. In some ways, this is sort of like that as well. I mean, it's like showing its biases, but of course you can also do other things. So, like, how can you? I mean, this is critical, but how can you otherwise critically prompt large language? So this is an example. So this piece here, this one, did something very, very simple. This is the last slide. We did something very, very simple. We took the critical critiques of Google Auto Suggest and also images and web search that have been published in the press and by academics, scholarly literature, and then we repeated them all. We repeated like 30 prompts. And then we did it then and now. So we have this is the visualization technique, then and right? So 2015, this is journalistic. This is great. And then 2022. Still female. So what we did is not only NARS, but it's also gender identities, religions, all the various things that people, ages that people have been doing last 15 years. And then we did it then and now. So the purpose was to kind of down a hierarchy of consent, which things are being actively moderated, which are unmoderated. This is compares Google computational quality. So this is the latest work on AI critique. It's not ChatGPT. It's one of the most obvious uses of large language. Try to keep it short and sweet.
Thank you. So probably if you have any questions, we could like take them. talk, and if you wanted to make them in Spanish, you're in charge of translation. So that we can ask in English.
I'm supposing that many of your methods rely on API and Python programming, all this is related to more codifying. So I'm guessing that your workshops emphasize that with your students, and you take or get the information from the APIs, and then you can structure for different data categories or classifications. What would you say is like the main digital source for academic studies related to media, not just consumption, media production, that we could utilize here in Mexico? Like, you need to really get to know that source. For example, YouTube, I know if it has like a solid free API, we could tap in, or maybe you could give some examples that you have experienced beforehand. Because we're talking here about big data, and those are thousands and thousands of different data points that I'm guessing, just guessing, because I have never used them, rely on some sort of code or Python program or something like that. I'm just guessing.
Yeah. So at the beginning, I showed you this slide, right? It's a screenshot. And then sort of this sort of list of tools that to show you live. So we don't rely on Python a lot. It's because we're in the humanities. We use interfaces. So we have these tools. So the current sort of flagship tool is this one. TMI forecast. And so we'll just open this. So with this software, you can get data from these. So this is it's an alphabetical order. So some of them you may not have heard of, but it mixes all tech. So that like we about the some Chinese thing. But anyway, this bit shoot, that's all tech. So that's TikTok, Tumblr, Twitter, of course, it just like the API. So we now scrape it. So this is a scraper. I don't know why my colleagues named it in Dutch. It's called Zeeskamer, but I don't know if you've heard of this Dutch engineer who's trying to take plastic out of the ocean with this big boom. That's a Zeeskamer. Anyway, so this is a browser extension. So then with that, then you go to TikTok and you query something, you get returns. Then you install an auto scroller. Then it scrolls and scrapes. Then it takes the data and puts it into this software. And you can visualize and analyze. But everything, every platform has a different way in. So, I mean, for Facebook and Instagram, I use colleagues use Groundtangle, which is a Meta product. I have a lab inside this, as you can see. So this is what it looks like, and then you query it, and you get a data set sent to you as a CSV file. So it's all this just depends on the platform. But of course, you can also use a lot of mean, the computational social sciences, they're all using Python in large groups. But we have traditionally built interfaces onto with tools that then collect data. So the most famous piece of software that we made, this is now a number of years ago, is the issue crawler. It's well known in some circles. And this is a kind of model. So it's a crawler. So you insert URLs here. And then here are the results of the crawls. And then it visualizes. It makes visualizations like this. Which websites are linked to which websites. And it's so that's the kind of model. Okay, you need a piece of software that's online, so it's not something that you download and stuff. It's online. It's servers that you input, that you query something, and then it outputs, has an analysis built in an output division section by default, and then you can start changing. So this is the philosophy, and as a just sort of can scroll through it just slowly. Is the software that does like very simple things like deduplicate or expand tiny URLs, and then there's stuff that scrapes GitHub, stuff that scrapes Google Autocomplete, Google Play Store scraper, and then we have a whole set of people who do app studies. So they rely on this, and also the iTunes scraper. This is the Wayback Machine that I was showing before, scripting stuff. And then, just as a conclusion, this. If you want to study YouTube data, use this. This is RIT. It's called ROGERS. It's the most famous YouTube data extraction and analysis tool. And it's an interface, and it sits atop the sort of 5 modules that the YouTube API has. So you can query it, download the data, and it puts the data, the format that allows you to visualize it. Normally in Gephi, that's what we use. It's the French Gephi. It's the French software from Sensepop. So we're friends with them. And we have outputs that are not Gephi files. It's expensive. So that gives you a kind of quick overview of how we do these things.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. Is that you want your what I can see is that the results that you some data center. It's not this is sort of such as a real friendly. Okay. Wondering how you manage these things. How do people working data? Wondering why that tangible. Everybody's hybrid. That's what I'm trying to explain at the beginning. So we have in my team we have maybe 30 people, various levels, and 8 people can code. maybe. And another 8 are allergic to anything like that. Right, okay, so those are the outer, and then in the middle, everyone's kind of, you can go out. So, but the reason, the reason is that we do quantity quality. That's also what we call it. So, and if you look it up, there's literature on this. In the literature, it's called polyquantitative. We know it because when we first quantitatively get the data and quantitatively interpret. But we're not data driven. It's not data driven. It's not method. It's research question. So, like for example, with this book on the left. So we were asked by the Ministry of Internal Affairs, Dutch government. This was a commission work. The question is, to what extent is this was about sort of Dutch and Indian landscape being manipulated by initially foreign which they weren't very happy. But anyway, so that's the research question. So, how do you do that? How do you operationalize? So it's always a question of how do you operationalize? And often, many of these tools tell you 60% of the tools are what you could call situated software. So we built them because we needed them at the moment. So I said, oh wait, I need to get this, and with this data, I need to do this. You know, so it became so it's very specific to the project. So everything's research question project driven as opposed
to. Through the years, have you noticed a major change in the in the influence of the platform, in the way people use the platform, the cultural behavior of the platform that have made you change the digital method that you use? It seems that it doesn't work anymore. Just for example,
sure.
because two things. One is when I was looking at the fake news, like Craig Silverman, and I remember reading an interview with Parag Agrawal just months before he was fired, saying we don't care anymore in Twitter, we don't care anymore about fake or truth. It is not as important as making the people don't harm each other with the conversations. That's our main issue right now. Then, I mean, we know everything, Elon Musk, but whatever. But they were already noticing that there were some issues that were more important. For example, as you were saying, TikTok. Imitation is, yes, it is a trend, but is there something else? Is there if they're using it in another way? Everybody's want to have that algorithm because it's the most powerful algorithm. And isn't that changing? Not how in the long term this has been changing. The use of the platforms, for example, Twitter, the most important.
No, I'm glad you asked that question. I mean, so this is in fact one of the central points that I'll make tomorrow. Is that you should criticize the object system, because both in the objects themselves, how they change, but also how research is changing. And you can see already that that TikTok research is no longer about just fun games. It's about the medium as series. So, instead of the same history. It's not something else. And so I think it's important to always restore a sense of but then there's also the question of researcher interaction with the platforms, because we have a very difficult relationship with them. Some researchers have a very adversarial relationship, others are more insiders. Some institutions are following privacy. Some not. So there's also a digital research divide. So platforms are don't want a lot of the research that they don't want it to be publicized. So Twitter, is to put the plug on is one of those channels. I mean, there is what has been called API clips. And this been also the notion of post API research, where now, because the platforms don't want us to research them, they're doing all sorts of different things. So YouTube, the YouTube data tools. We have a developer's key that we've had for many years. And the amount of data we want from the key is far more generous. Much Twitter, you can't. Scrape music service. That's you could get a cease and desist letter and stuff. So crowd tangle is about services is winding down. It's being replaced by something called both the history of the object, history of the search of the object, but also the history of the relationship between researcher, and access to it, all those things together.
Talking about fake news and disinformation processes, have you identified any reliable software or tool in order to debunk all this information?
So colleagues and I have started to study OSINT, open source intelligence, which is this interesting field. I guess so let's call it the new digital forensics. And of course, I mean, recently in my first presentation about this, OSINT is very interesting because it has quite a long history, but now it's being used not only in military and corporate area, but also by data journalists and what they call digital investigators. Digital investigations are the most well-known, which is at least Bellingcat architecture. Interesting. Bellingcat, after the recent leak of the messages all this principles within 48 hours they traced. So they're very active, traced the source. They didn't actually come trace the source of this is where various papers were being distributed. They also very well known in human rights work by Mexican Code, which of course is also studying, I think, in connection with some of the goings on. But what is, and what you would expect is it's also being weaponized to this counter process, so that you see it in pro-Russian television channels, sort of saying that the massacre in Hong actually did not take place, these crisis actors, and then they have this sort of ocean style presentation. Run that, show you the so, this is an example. This is a pro-Russian weaponized OSINT. So it shows you sort of green screen, as if it's a Hollywood production. See the circles. So that these are vectors. This is the style. This is the style. So now it's, so this is why to sort of first slide come with the new truth was. So it's like the forensics, counter forensics. So the short answer is yes and no. Right? So there are all of these tools for verification, debunking, fact checking, etc. But it doesn't resolve. It depends. I mean, this is not. I'm not making a relativist point. What I'm saying is that there are counter knowledge infrastructures, so to speak.
With the rise of AI, particularly with the generation of images,
Yeah.
how will that affect or make evolve digital methods? Because now it is not relying on discourse. This is much more relying on image and the power of the visuals. Different images. Some of them are true images, some other are fake. But if you see, all the discourse is moving towards the perception of the visuals. And perhaps it started even with the research presentations that moved from only showing data to start showing graphs, different styles. So what do you think of this? How will it move? This is a good example. This is much more powerful to see Zelensky presented as a fake guy who is doing fake statements by only showing a picture than any other statement, textual statement.
I mean, as media scholars, we're used to the backstage. So this is not that surprising. That's Zelensky would be produced. It doesn't make it fake. But you know, if you show something like this, you immediately think about it. Fabrication, production, post-production, sort of media industry. So Zelensky as media industry figure, not as president, defender. But of course, we know that he's all these things. But you know that you can pull the "there's nothing new under the sun" type of trick, and you say, well, we can study generative imagery, we can study imagery. So you can say that it circulates, and that it resonates. Right, so you can study them. You do image studies with digital methods. Or you can take the generative sort of itself very, very seriously. And move down those things you talk about the forensic towards verification. So these are the two. And so in the one, you're doing something that we've always done. That images and how they function in cultural society. Or you can look at images as product of particular kind of digital tools. Right? So this would be this, like, we would say, oh, we're doing the same things as we've always done. However, it seems that there needs to be like a story. It seems to be that happens to. So it seems to me that there's the tools to generate, then there's the tools to detect. And so most people are studying these, but I would usually propose to study these, and then right, so that so it's the second order. Yeah. So it's not the general term itself, but it's detection now. Because I think that that's where, in some sense, the action, so the extent to which something is generated. So you can study like this and how much circulates, or you can study the debate about whether studying the forensic tools. And this is something that I'm able to do because I'm working with a lot of the software developers, verification tools. What's so interesting about it is they have so many false positives. So many. And the reason why they have some false positives is because, well, they're not kind of media scholars in the sense of that all images, like everything in the media they're all polished. They're all product of post-production. And so I'm always saying, well, the tools the forensic tools are great, but you're constantly triggered by the fact that this one has gone through After Effects and this one has gone through Photoshop. So they're all manipulated. So everything's, and so I think that's the critique of the tools. Well, this is.
Well, I have many questions. I just and I'll go back to something you were saying, and it's the research question.
Yeah.
Three questions before. And so, being the devil's advocate, what are the remains of traditional methods? Like, how do you deal with them? Use them? Like, is it like a basis, or is it just like they just like throw them away, focus on these, or like do you somehow integrate ethnographic traditional methods into reason? I was thinking that this could link because of research-oriented way to produce knowledge, and the other one is what's the place of theory? Like theory goes first within the production of the object. Does it go by afterwards whenever you have all the data? Then you put glasses on, so to speak, or does it like you go to the discussion point to the very end?
So I only get the where's the theory question in German, so this is great. Because the Germans, they have a particular idea of theory, and so I'm sort of curious to hear your idea of what's theory. So we're not practicing traditional methods, but they're not excluded in these methods. I think a lot of this work is compatible with and there are quite a few programs in Europe that combine digital research methods. Like that. But elsewhere, in a lot of the Danish universities, they combine these. So, because they study like platform vernaculars, which are often very elusive and difficult to capture with data. So platforms of styles, cultures. And I always, in writing about this sort of work, also embrace this. I don't self-identify psychological, but I embrace the fact that platforms are vernaculars, and I try to. It's part of the research. So we're studying what's happening in society and culture through online data, but we're also studying what's happening in the planet. So that's important. So what's happening in the planet might be quite specific. So I gave an example about TikTok. You can tease out a vernacular with the data. So TikTok using hashtags all over the place. So that's like that. So then you can tease out vernacular when you do these kind of digital research. But anyway, it goes well with that. A lot of people also code, don't do qualitative coding, do content analysis. I tend to try to like not have to rely on that. I try to share methods so that you can characterize a post according to without codes. So how do you do that? So it's an alternative to that doesn't change it. One of the chapters of the visual methods book is called post demographics. So it says that you can derive people's interests and their maybe voting profiles, not on the basis of income, geography, education, and some sense of class, let's say, but rather media preferences, interests. So these digital research methods are oftentimes positioned specifically as contrasts to traditional methods, but they're not replacements or substitutes. So trying to think through what else can be done. As I said, a lot of people use digital research methods. This is a more theoretical. They want a qualitative basis. So they need the ethnography, they need the survey, they need the interview, because that's the ground. That's the ground truth. This digital. You know, it's not a soul. So that's part of the theory of digital methods is whether one can ever have it. But in terms of other theory, so we oftentimes sort of historicize periodized. The other one is there's a lot of concept. So there's a theory of method. There's a lot of periodization. So those are the three contributions. There isn't a large, like, kind of overarching framework to study the internet. We should. The internet consists of 7 essential features. This is how we're going to explain it. It's not like
Although the critical approach is like.
true. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's another option. It's you know, it's not Marxist. It's not. So it doesn't have. It's not critical discourse. It's not. It doesn't have this larger umbrella. Yes.
I don't know if you have any question, comments, or if you have any questions or questions.
Well, I'm just my only question is I'm curious what resonates. This is because like I'm a professor of new media and digital culture, right? So it's sort of very internet, so that's what I've been doing for 15 years. So this is where I'm coming from. Most people don't start digital, right? So I did. I mean, there are, you know, nowadays there are more professors of media and digital culture, but at the time I was like the first one. So it's coming from there as opposed to, although my background is back in philosophy of sciences. So I self-identify as a random epistemologist. So it's like, what's the knowledge that you can get? So that's, I suppose that would be larger. So I'm curious what there's a particular resonance with you. Or have access to. It was just.
Well, okay, I'll just say my impression. I think, and I speak only on my behalf, coming from very classic sociology, French sociology. Everything that's related to tech orientation, at least in the part of the department I was, which was like cultural sociology, something that was not good. But now here I feel the need, like really to understand. And I don't feel like I'm missing the boat, but I've already missed it. So I'm just trying to to hold all this information, all these way universities moving towards. And I also think only for the sake of my students, nothing like constantly thinking about them. And they are all interested in subjects that are somehow digitally related. So the idea that there's no difference between digital and non-digital is very clear for them. And whenever I talk to them and I tell them that I don't have any social media, so I just know to have them, it don't exist. Well, you know, I have like my backstage life where I do exist, but I can get their interest, and mostly for masters and PhD students who are not interested at all in anything that's not related to media. It's very rare that we find something like, I want to study like very ethnographic, the very late 19th, early 20th century topics. So I really feel the need to like, hold these and get involved with. So that's my
Yeah.
super, like, I'm super excited.
I think, so there is this field. It's in place. So, the sociology and technology, right? Which has not embraced digital culture. But it has embraced infrastructure studies. And so this is where that field is at the moment. Infrastructure studies. That's fascinating. I think the students, I think that would be compatible with what we do. It's a lot about the sort of stuff, but it's more social. So that would be, that's an area. Because it's, they rely on background star. And it's about so that's one thing. But I mean, digital culture is also something that I think the digital ethnographers are the ones who are very, very close to the people studying Instagram, TikTok. There's the Aberdeen, so the Bishop, that's what it is. These people are they're constantly interviewing influencers. They have access to direct access to a lot of them culture. And what they're doing is they're debunking a lot of ideas about influencers. So they're taking it very seriously as work. And this is another way in. So when I do my first year students work on the influencer. I approach it quite practically, like how do they build a following? Because that fascinates me. So because it's funny because in my classes I'll have if there are 100 students, I'll have 2 influencers actually different areas. Some of them are quite niche, others are other big. And then they so everyone sort of follows them, watches them, are they? But then to begin to talk about it, look conceptually, and also how to research it empirically, they're just, they're not looking at their phones. They're really engaged. So like the ethnographic is something. Before, in terms of digital sociology, she's an estimate person. Digital sociology is now something that other fields are already really studying quite a lot. Same with STS. What does not do with it? But I think it's now quite viable, which is sociology. So what the big critique is in there, and now we see this with ChatGPT, is that we're living like we live in a living lab. So that's the huge digital sociology. We're test subjects constantly. What are the consequences of tested and no longer producing things in the lab? This is one of the digital sociologists that major sociology and testing.
Do you use ChatGPT a lot?
Not really. I mean, so at first I was, so what I think is interesting is to, and we did actually use it, is to try to have ChatGPT annotate data sets. And in three different projects, it was quite good.
Like this, no?
Well, it wasn't good at giving us the names of all the names. Okay, so yeah, we found a list of dubious actors in dubious sources, and then we said, you know, could you give us related sources that are related to this? They were very good, but if we asked them for dubious sources, they were all just made up, which is actually quite fun. So, yeah, so you need to know how to, there's some skill there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you need domain knowledge to sort of to evaluate the quality of the results.
Because it lies.
Yeah.
And then it apologizes.
Yeah, and apologize.
Hallucinate.
I said, yeah, you're right.
I'm sorry, I was not,
Yeah.
I didn't know well enough.
Well, let me tell you my background. I used to work my whole life in advertising. And I realized, at one point I realized that internet was changing the business in a way
Yeah.
that it was gonna be a mess, which it disappeared basically. So we decided to sell our agency and we were met. And I returned to the university to understand what was killing us in business, which was for me was not very relevant, but it was on what was happening on terms of indignation, hatred, and all this element. So I started working. So I did my master's degree here. I'm doing the PhD here, and I'm now doing research around cancel culture. And it has been difficult. It is difficult to study internet, digital methods, methodology. It's difficult because it's in I don't know how to say this, but as Sandra was saying, we are more traditional and
Traditional is good.
well, I know.
It's good.
Yeah, but for just an example, I went at one point when I was deciding where to continue studying, I went to and tried to have a place in sociology and anthropology. They told me, no, you're not gonna have a digital understanding of anthropology. We don't do that. We don't believe in that. We do traditional. Traditional ethnography. You will have to go to a town, stay there for 3 months, and really,
Minimum.
yeah, and make an order. I said, what if we consider that this is a town? I said, no, a town. So now I'm doing this, and cancel culture is difficult. In a way, for example, there are like 2 or 3 very well-known researchers, académicos in digital studies, but it's complicated to approach it, and they have their very clear lines of what they think and what they don't think. For example, in my research, I see the Donald Trump situation when he was disconnected from all his platforms, 140 million persons or less. He said, here is a part of cancel culture. And I haven't been able to get the points of view of the other, this very well-known researchers, because they said, no, I don't believe it. So it is quite, It is difficult at this point in Mexico to talk about this kind of stuff. That's my point of view.
No, I mean, you could just, I mean, so there's, so anthropology is a very traditional, you know, if you read, so even like, even it's sort of dabbling in the digital. So like Sarah Pink, she was probably one of the most interesting names of anthropology plus digital, and digital very small, tiny. The person who founded virtual ethnography and then made it digital is Christine.
Yes.
And she's someone who is you know, is very traditional in the sense of taking the first encounter with building a modest interest to collaborate. So all these sorts of things. So a lot of digital ethnography, you could also sort of see it as very traditional. So you don't have to sort of see it as a sort of, one doesn't have to see it as a sort of development. And so sort of you're bringing all those insights with you into kinds of all and then the question is, you know, do you want to add some new techniques to the toolbox in order to, for example, demarcate space of study? How do you do that? Well, there's a way to do that traditionally, but maybe I find digital but then there's still a lot of it. It's mainly interview. So it's you're getting in touch with the community and building trust in what you do. So it's not. I mean, it's the field work is a little bit different. So you are going to you know, indigenous. You try to get access to industry. So, but yeah, I wouldn't. So I would just see the digital as kind of extension, very healthy way, embracing it.
Yeah. Great.
Thank you. We were also, we can get a more pause and then we lunch.
Yeah, great. Okay.
20 minutes. This is very tight. 10 minutes. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then we'll see you tomorrow. For the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Pues sí,